127. Chapter 15. First Runaway Home. Summary. My struggles of the culture shock and new role in life were particularly challenging on my part, in addition to Jeffrey's constant verbal abuse toward me. Jeffrey's other shock revelation gave me a conclusion of his psychological behaviors. I got fed up with my husband, Jeffrey's evil personality, that made me decide to leave him for the first time in the middle of the cool night. It was another year of celebrating Christmas. In my second year, I felt emptiness because of the absence of my family in the Philippines. I was still struggling with culture shock as I tried to adapt to my new environment. It seemed everything was all brand new to me. At one time, when I asked Jeffrey to send some Christmas presents, like money, to my family during this important season, he told me, "Yeah, just give them some, but if you are writing them in your language, make sure you interpret all of it in English." I frowned and asked, "Why do I have to do that?" "I want to make sure that you are not saying bad things behind my back." I did what he told me. It was hard, but I had to do it, or another argument would take place. Each time he talked to my parents or siblings, he was genuinely nice to them, but after the telephone call ended, he said hateful things about them. He was the most hypocritical person I ever met. One day when Jeffrey was working on the machine guns that he purchased and repaired in our bedroom, he got frustrated and yelled at me, "You lazy bum, you better find a job." That hurts me, calling me names because I was not being lazy. God knows how much I tried the best to get a job to help him to pay some expenses. I helped him with his business bookkeeping, doing all the household chores, taking care of the kids, taking care of him, and taking care of his geckos, lizards. As I pondered all the hurtful things in my heart, I avoided him, not talking to him at all until I told him what I felt about what he did to me. He apologized and explained that he got very 128. Frustrated with his work and our finances. He suggested that I should get help from the Baptist church we were attending. On the next Sunday morning, before the service, I attended the women's Bible study and asked one of the members to help me get a job. Thanks be to God that one of the members of this congregation told me that her former coworker and friend was a supervisor in the laundry department, and I could use her name as my personal reference. On the following day, I applied for a job at the laundry. It was humiliating because I was a teacher in my country, but I needed a job of any kind now. I handed my application to the supervisor, introduced myself, and received it. I got a call from the company to come for orientation. I was incredibly happy that I finally got a job. I worked the first shift from 5:30 a.m. until 2:30 p.m. Transportation was my only problem. Jeffrey drove me to work in the beginning, but he advised me to ask one of my coworkers to give me a ride back and forth, like a carpool, and then pay her weekly. On my first day of work, I met a genuinely nice Filipino coworker, Jessa. I talked to her a little bit, then asked her if she could give me a ride back and forth for which I would pay weekly. I knew it was really hard for her to help me, but she took pity on me and agreed. On the first day of work, I was overly excited. An assistant laundry supervisor assigned me to a back section where I found myself sorting nasty clothes such as baby diapers, adult pads, hospital gowns, blankets, and linens with a lot of human wastes that included stools, urine, and blood. It was a nasty job, but it was a job. During my first day, I almost threw up because the smell was so putrid. But what could I do? This was the only place that offered me a job. I did the absolute best I could and worked so fast wherever they put me that I got muscle pains all over my body. I had to be up at about 3 a.m. each workday. It was a very tiring job for which I was paid $7.40 per hour, even though I was assigned more tasks the longer I worked there. When I arrived home in the afternoon, I showered, took a 2-hour nap, then helped Jeffrey's mom prepare dinner. 129. Although living in my own home and supposedly was the master of my kitchen, my mother-in-law controlled the kitchen while I fed my step-youngest son for 2 hours. He ate so slowly. After feeding my step-youngest son, I had to help him with his assignments and bathed him, washed the dishes, did the laundry, fed the lizards, and cleaned the house. This was my welcome to America. I got so tired that I had to do everything for my husband and stepsons. At one time, Jeffrey told me, "You have to do everything that I was doing before I married you." I replied, "That is not fair." I thought it was unfair that he would not do anything except work on his guns, watching movies, and taking all his pain pills to get high, saying he took on all the other jobs before he met me. One night when we had a huge argument about working assignments, he said that a friend who had Filipino friends told him I had faked my college transcript. They told him a lot of lies, of course, but he believed them and not me. We argued in the kitchen, and I started screaming and shaking. "How dare you do not believe that I am a college graduate? Instead, you believe your liar friends?" He knocked me down onto our kitchen's floor and shoved my head into the refrigerator and dishwasher. I got up and saw a lot of knives on the kitchen sink. I was very tempted to grab one knife to kill him. Thank God, I controlled myself. The book of Galatians 5:22-23, NKJV, which says, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such, there is no law." On the following night, we had another huge argument during which he dragged me out from our bedroom to go outside for a ride. He drove recklessly in our red Mustang car to my Filipino friend's house, where he told me to stay. On other occasions, he ordered me into our white truck, and he drove me far away into the country on back roads. I was afraid he was going to kill me and bury me out there, but he brought me back home and told me he needed peace in his life. Several times he showed me our money that was hidden in a closet. "This is where I hide my money," he said. "If I ever find any of it missing, I will blame you." Sometimes he told me that I should not feel left out and should not say that his 130 house was not my house. At other times, he refused to allow me to go inside our bank with him, saying that banking was his business and not mine. I did not say anything about my problems to my coworkers or to Jessa, my Filipino friend and coworker who gave me a ride back and forth every day. One day as we drove to work, Jessa told me she was concerned about my married life and my welfare. I finally decided to tell her the truth. She advised me to get all my things together little by little and bring them to her house so that if I had to leave Jeffrey, I would at least have my clothes and other personal items in a safe place. I was troubled about her advice as I was still very loyal to Jeffrey, and, most of all, I loved him very much. I would never leave my husband, no matter what, I told Jessa. No matter how much he hurt me, I could not leave him. I did not tell Jessa that one night Jeffrey's mom went to the laundry room and told me that she would want to do my laundry. I told her that I should do my own laundry, not her doing my laundry, and she grabbed a shirt from my hand and choked me. When I told Jeffrey, he said, "Good, you needed that." I assumed that she must have been abused, too, by her parents. That is why she acted that way. No wonder my husband was an abuser. He probably learned from his parents. How she reacted gave me a lot of answers as to why Jeffrey was acting very badly toward me. He told me many times of all the physical, mental, sexual, and emotional abuse he experienced from his parents. He held grudges against them, but was too cowardly to confront his parents about their mistakes. After 2 months of my new job, Jeffrey showed me a lot of money in a bundle. I asked him how he got so much. "I sold a lot of AK receivers to this man," he said. "Did you pay taxes of it?" I asked, "No, why should I pay taxes?" "You better pay taxes, or we will be in trouble." "No," was his reply. "Han, can we send at least $100 or $50 to my parents for their food? They are hurting right now, please." Jeffrey looked angrily at me. You are a user, a thief. You just wanted my money. That is why you married me. 131. I left him right away and went to my youngest stepson's bedroom and started to cry. Then I yelled at Jeffrey, "You are so greedy. You have $100,000 and you are mad because I asked you for $100 or $50 for my parents' food. You are so greedy." Jeffrey got terribly upset, got up from bed, went to his youngest son's bedroom, and stood in front of me. While I was sitting on the bed, he grabbed the plastic nursery table and threw it on the floor in front of me and said, "You do not yell at me." Then he left. I went right to our bedroom, packed my belongings, and left the house. It was 9 p.m. I left home and dragged my things in the street as I walked and cried. It was dark, quiet, and cool. I saw the house of my oldest stepson's friend, and I knocked on the door. They invited me in, and I told them how my husband had mistreated me. He wanted me to be subservient to him as a slave. I asked them what subservient meant. They both told me that it is not in the Word of God. I told them that Jeffrey said all Filipinos are dogs, and he abused me emotionally, sexually, verbally, mentally, and physically. I begged them not to tell Jeffrey where I would go for safety. "Do you have friends here with whom you can stay?" I was asked. "Yes, I can call her." I called my Filipino friend, Angela, right away, another Filipino, who I met at the Baptist church, and asked if she could let me stay in her house. She was a few days from giving birth to her first baby. She asked her husband if I could stay at their house, and he said it was fine with him. But then she changed her mind because of her situation with the baby, explaining that she needed quiet and did not want to get involved with my problem at this time. Angela asked me the phone number where she could reach me, and, in a few minutes, I received a call from another friend, a Caucasian American, a member of the Baptist church, who offered me a place in her home. I was given a ride to the apartment, and I climbed up the stairs to the second floor with all my baggage. When she opened the door, I recognized her as Lisa, a member I had met in church. She and her husband had less room than was in my house, but I was so grateful for their hospitality. A smaller house is better than a big house. 132. Where my life is hell every day. At least I could have peace, love, and joy here, I thought. My Caucasian American friend invited me to sit on the floor with her. "So, what happened, Kimberly? Tell me, Lisa, am I a worthless person? Am I ugly?" Lisa leaned over and hugged me. "No, you are very worthy in the eyes of God. We love you, Kimberly. You are not worthless." "Who told you that?" "My husband told me that I was worthless almost every day. He had been calling me worthless, ugly, a dog, a bum, and other names." "Tell me more. What has he done to you physically?" I told her everything, all the abuse I got from my wicked husband. I told her all the abuses I have had, verbal, emotional, mental, sexual, and physical. Lisa showed me scriptures with verses from the Bible about my worth in the eyes of God. She prayed over me and advised me not to go back to Jeffrey, otherwise, she and her husband would not be able to help me again. This wonderful Christian couple fed me and gave me a place to stay at no cost. She taught me how to drive a car. I changed my Yahoo email password and my ID number and tried to contact immigration regarding my green card interview that was approaching in one more week. I remembered that Jeffrey had threatened to send me back to the Philippines. Lisa was hospitable in every way, including allowing me to use all her makeup. We visited Angela together. After Angela heard my story, she advised me to apply for a self-petition. She told me that I would need to be divorced first so that I would qualify for the petition. On the next day, Lisa drove me to work. None of my co-workers knew what was going on in my life. It was just a normal day. While talking with my Colombian friend, Narissa, who advised me how to get my credentials for my degree in the Philippines, and she encouraged me to pursue teaching in the public school system. This all was another blessing that God poured out to me. I had no idea how the various systems worked here in America. I was a very innocent and naive person at that time, just come out from my shell. 133. I contacted my great aunt who was living in Wisconsin. She told me that when she called me, it was Jeffrey who answered the phone, and he was crying while talking to her. He told my great aunt that I left him, but he did not say why I had done so. He was trying to make me look bad in the eyes of my great aunt. She advised me to work out our problems. I should go back to Jeffrey, she advised. Newly married couples will always struggle over various issues. She told me that she really felt pity for Jeffrey when she heard him crying. My heart melted, and I also felt pity for Jeffrey. I promised to call him the following day. Lisa warned me not to call him ever, but I did call him anyway. Lisa was disappointed when she learned what I had done. She reminded me that once I will go back to my husband, she will never be able to help me again. I had an awfully hard time making my decision. However, I was excited to call Jeffrey. It was hard to hide my feelings that I was still deeply in love with him. We agreed to see each other, and we set up a date for marriage counseling with one of our pastors at the Baptist church. We met in the counseling room. I asked Jeffrey if he wanted me to come back to him. If we get divorced, I said, I can apply for a self-petition to become a U.S. citizen. Jeffrey frowned and said, of course I want you to come back home. Why do you think I am here for marriage counseling if I was not willing to work out our problems? What kind of question is that? The pastor asked Jeffrey to leave the room while he talked with me alone. He wanted to gather all the facts regarding our problems and issues from my point of view. He asked many questions, and we each took notes. I tried to apply what I had learned in my guidance counseling course in college. Jeffrey then met alone with the pastor. Finally, we both were called for reconciliation. The pastor advised me to gather all my paperwork in case my husband abused me again. I thanked my Caucasian American friends Lisa and her husband for their help. I knew she would be disappointed that Jeffrey and I would get back together and try one more time, but she had no choice other than to respect my decision and let me go. I told 134 her I would not ask for her help again. Then I called the parents of my stepson's friend to give me a ride home, and I called Jeffrey to let him know I was on the way back to the house. We hugged and kissed each other, and he promised he would not hit me again. If you do hit me again, I responded, I will leave you forever. Jeffrey just laughed. You will come back. All the women who have left me have wanted to come back. He knew how much I loved him, and he probably thought I was not being serious. That evening while we were lying in bed, we talked about our marriage counseling. Jeffrey laughed at one point and told me that pastor, who gave us the marriage counseling, had advised him to send me back to the Philippines. That pastor had predicted that if I remained in the United States, Jeffrey might be imprisoned forever. From my point of view at first, I considered that pastor to be evil, and not the true follower of Christ he was supposed to be. There are times when you cannot trust anyone except God. And yourself, I thought. Then I realized I was assuming the pastor knew how many illegal guns Jeffrey had processed through our house without paying taxes on those sales. I assumed that Jeffrey lied about himself and his criminal activities when he talked with the pastor. Having been so deceived, the pastor then had advised Jeffrey to send me back home. Again, as we lay side by side in bed, supposedly a loving husband and wife, Jeffrey told me he had notified immigration that I left him, thus making me subject to deportation. I was deeply angered by that action on his part, but I hid my anger for the moment. We had enough issues to resolve already. Jeffrey continued to be so abusive that he finally wore me out, and my original love for him evaporated. I now questioned whether all Caucasian American husbands and wives depended upon each other and supported each other no matter what was happening in their lives. I confess that when Jeffrey swore at me, he called me a F-liar and other terrible names, I began to swear right back at him. On one occasion, he hit me, and I immediately hit him back and pushed him really hard. 135. When you have extreme anger in your heart, and it is ready to explode, that's what is going to happen. You can deeply harm a person who hurts you so badly. Jeffrey was really fortunate that I did not kill him for the way he physically, emotionally, sexually, and mentally abused me. God always guided me during my troubles. Fortunately, my deep belief that committing murder is against his will stopped me from taking such drastic action, no matter how often, and how deeply he hurt me mentally, sexually, emotionally, and physically. The book of Exodus 20:13, NKJV, which says, "You shall not murder." Also, in the book of Revelation 21:8, NKJV, which says, "But the cowardly, unbelieving, abominable, murderers, sexually immoral, sorcerers, idolaters, and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burns with fire and brimstone, which is the second death." Vocabularies: subservient, prepared to obey others unquestioningly. Culture shock, the feeling of disorientation experienced by someone who is suddenly subjected to an unfamiliar culture, way of life, or set of attitudes. Additional Bible verses: Matthew 23:27-33, NKJV. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you are like whitewashed tombs, which indeed appear beautiful outwardly, but inside are full of dead men's bones and all uncleanness. Even so you also outwardly appear righteous to men, but inside you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! Because you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteous, and say, "If we had lived in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in the blood of the prophets. Therefore, you are witnesses against yourselves." 136. That you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. Fill up, then, the measure of your father's guilt. Serpents, a brood of vipers! How can you escape the condemnation of hell? Titus 1:16, NKJV. They profess to know God, but in works they deny him, being abominable, disobedient, and disqualified for every good work. 1 Corinthians 7:15, NKJV. But if the unbeliever departs, let him depart. A brother or a sister is not under bondage in such cases. But God has called us to peace. Leviticus 19:18, NKJV. You shall not take vengeance, nor bear any grudge against the children of your people, but you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. James 4:4, NKJV. Adulterers and adulteresses! Do you not know that friendship with the world is enmity with God? Whoever therefore wants to be a friend of the world makes himself an enemy of God. 1 Timothy 6:10, NKJV. For the love of money is a root of all kinds of evil, for which some have strayed from the faith in their greediness, and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. Zechariah 2:8, NKJV. For thus says the Lord of hosts, He sent me after glory, to the nations which plunder you, for he who touches you touches the apple of his eye. Psalm 17:8, NKJV. Keep me as the apple of your eye, hide me under the shadow of your wings. 137. Ephesians 5:2, NKJV. And walk in love, as Christ also has loved us, and given himself for us, an offering, and a sacrifice to God for a sweet-smelling aroma. Matthew 7:15, NKJV. Beware of false prophets, who come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ravenous wolves.